What's up guys, Sean the Bro here, and today we're going to be working on pushing enemy characters, or basically just pushing your opponent, and your opponent being able to push you. When we load the game, you will see that we can walk into our opponent and actually push them across the screen. Now we can change the rate at which we push them, so don't worry if that's too fast or too slow. I feel like it's pretty fast compared to other fighting games, but you can change it to be whatever you want. But the logic is pretty simple here, so I'm going to keep it a shorter episode. And another thing we're going to do in this episode is actually cover jumping on your opponent's head. So we've had an issue for a while where you can jump on the opponent's head and you bounce off of them. That issue is being fixed, and now we will be able to stand on their head. Now, we don't really want that either, of course, but solving that will be a different thing. It's going to be related to some changes I made a few episodes ago, and we'll cover that in one of the upcoming episodes, maybe even the next episode, falling through your opponent and pushing them out of the way. But basically, we're going to stop the bouncing. That way we can at least determine the logic we want when we're on top of their head, and it won't get us stuck in a situation where we're bouncing different levels or being thrown off, because that just looks bad. Now at least we can sit up there, and then all we have to do is disable the collision between the two to make them fall to the ground. Or just make it so that we can fall through for a quick second, disable initially, and then push them out with the pushing logic we have now. Either way works, and we will get to that in the next episode, or one of the following episodes. But for now, we're just going over the basic pushing of walking into your opponent and you push them across the screen. Okay? Cool. So, to get started, there's no code in this episode today, but if you did want to catch up on everything we've done in the series, or catch up and just see how far we've come from the first episode, I will leave a link right here in this iCard to the very first episode of the Fighting Game Tutorial series. And other than that, I'm going to be working the base character BP today. So if you have not made all your child classes, all your blueprints like Mutant BP, Mannequin BP, a child of your base character BP, you may want to watch this episode right here to see how we did that, so that all the changes in the base character blueprint can be transferred to the children, the Mutant, the Mannequin, the Vanguard, any of those. Okay, so base character BP. Now, base character BP does not have a mesh. I mean, it has a mesh component, right? But I don't have an actual skeletal mesh attached, because I have that is my base class, and then the child class, it has all the logic in it, and then the child classes have the logic, or have the mesh. So, base character BP is what we're working in. We also have Mutant BP, Mutant Character BP. Let's go to Mutant Character BP. And you can see it's got all this stuff in it, right? And it's a child of mutant character. Remember, we got rid of all of that. Well, we didn't get rid of it. I still have it here in case you want it. But just to make things clear, we have base character BP, and then we have Mannequin, Mutant, Mannequin, and Vanguard BP. So all the ones that don't say character are the ones that we want. So these are our three classes, and the reason we're doing the base character is because this applies to everyone that is a child of base character. The reason I'm putting so much emphasis on this is the first time we're really using it since we had that episode using the base character BP. So the time we use the base class is whenever we want all of our other blueprint children to follow this logic. And we want all our characters to push and be able to be pushed. So we're going to do it in the base character BP. Alright. So, today, we need to basically, the first thing we're going to need to do to be able to push the opponent is know when a collision occurs, and then basically determine what state our character is in and the state of the character that's being pushed is in. That way we know what we want to do with them, because we don't always want to push them. If they're in the air, we probably don't want to push them. If they're hit stunned, we probably don't want to push them. Maybe when they're just standing still, you can push them. But you could do it from any state. I'm going to show you how to kind of break it up. So first things first, I went to my capsule component, because this is, even though we use the hitbox, you can't really see it because of course, there's no mesh, so the capsule component isn't here. But it is there, it's just not around the mesh. So when you spawn a character in the game, it will be there, no worries. But you click on your capsule component and scroll down. And click on component hit. Okay? So, on component hit, the capsule component, even though we have the hurt box, the capsule component really is what determines collision still. The hurt box is just for if they take damage from attacks, but the capsule component determines, you know, their actual movement and collisions with barriers and things like that. So, on component hit will fire when we collide with the other character. In fact, it'll fire anytime there's a collision with our capsule collider. We just have to make sure that it's the right class and the right object to be able to perform the logic we want when there is a hit. So, I'm going to go over all of this, of course, but this is just, you can put it anywhere you want in the event graph. But basically, we're going to check if it's a character of our choosing, and then push at the direction and speed that we want. Now, the way I'm going to do it, and you don't have to do this, is I'm going to take the character state of the character that was hit, and I'm going to check if they're moving left or moving right. If they are moving left or are moving right, then I'm going to cast to be a base character BP, and say, basically, what this part is saying, am I in a state where I could push a character? Because you have on component hit here, right? So let's demonstrate. When does this fire? Because this is really important. So the text hello should print every time on component hit is used. So let's open this up. Okay, so initially for the ground, and then when I walk into this, you see that there's a lot here, right? Even if I just hit it once, I'm getting 4 of these guys. But even on one singular hit, if I stop instantly, I get 2. So both capsule colliders are saying on hit, regardless of who is colliding here. Alright? You'll never find an odd number unless something goes wrong with the collision. So this is why it's important that we break this up and we determine what states or what instances the player should be able to push in. So I'm checking if the character state of hit is moving left or moving right. If they are, we know that this is the character that should be pushing the other character. The character in idle or another state should not be pushing, or if they're both in that state, then we'll also probably not want to push, okay? So, I grab character state, which we are in the base character BP, so we'll have all of our code variables. I have an enum called character state, and I have one for moving. I just drag off of it, do equal equal, enum, and we check if it's moving left or moving right. This is an OR boolean. And then I go into a branch, and if it's true that they're moving left or moving right, we check the other actor. The other actor is the actor that this actor hit. So if this actor is moving left or moving right, the other actor, if we cast it and it's a base character BP, then we know we collided with the other character in the game. And if we collided with the other character, we can use them and check their state to determine if we want to actually push them or not. So I cast it to a base character BP. Then drag off of that, make sure you drag off of that and get this object's character state. Okay? And check if they're not moving. Now, if you don't want to just do it while they're idle, you can set this to be whatever you want, but I only want to push them if they're idle, and I want to be able to push if I'm moving, and really if I'm running. We haven't done running yet. We have done dashing, but we haven't done running, and I'd like to cover running for certain characters, and then thus we will add this logic. I already have enum states set up for running left and running right. But we haven't done it yet, so I'm not going to worry about that for now. And plus we will also push them at a different speed if we are running. Okay, so we'll have a few minor changes. Now, we're checking if the character state is not moving, which not moving is kind of a weird name, but really it just means idle, if they're not touching the controller. You probably should do it if they're blocking as well and you're walking into them. So make this as diverse and as inclusive as you want. I just did not moving because it was easy for me to test, and also since I'm one player, one person controlling both players, then, I don't have to press anything on the other player to be able to push them. Alternatively, If you want them to be able to be pushed under basically any circumstances, you could just have it set not equal to this. So not equal to jumping or something like that. Then if this is true, so basically if we're able to push and this person is able to be pushed, then we just have to determine the direction to push. So all I do is I get is flipped of the pushing character. Is flipped of the pushing character, because I'm not dragging off the base character BP to grab this. And then I'm pushing the character in the given direction. So I'm doing something called add actor world offset, which normally I would do like launch character here. So the problem with launch character in a case like this is if you are launching the character over and over, it tries to set the character into a falling state. That's what launch character does. Even if you don't launch them into the air, if you have 0Z value, which is up in this case. So it can look a little bit weird. It's a little jittery if you're doing it over and over again like that. It's great actually for, one launch. Like you do a launcher, it's perfect. But for a continuous movement where I can keep pushing them as much as I want, it's actually pretty weird. So instead I do add actor world offset. Now, don't worry, this isn't bad. Add actor world offset is literally just going to take the location that we get it and move it to that spot. It's pretty simple, actually. So this is perfectly fine. It's also multiplayer safe, so there's nothing wrong with doing this. And I basically just chose an arbitrary value. You could have a different pushing value for each character. You could have it depend on the character's speed. Now, we have not separated character speeds yet, but if you wanted to, you don't even really have to set it up anything in code. You could go into your character movement component and change your max walk speed here. Okay. And, have it determined by that. But since this on hit is going to be firing all the time, it fires very, very frequently when we're colliding with them. Every update, really. So you want to make it a small value, otherwise you're going to push them insanely fast. Like, for example, if I made this 10.08, I mean, you're going to see how ridiculous this is. Alright. So it looks really jittery because I'm pushing him 10.8 units every time. Now he's pushing me to the 0.8, I'm pushing him 10.8. So, you do want it to be a small value. Almost definitely. But you can change it that easily. And then, of course, if they're not flipped, I have the opposite. For you, these may be reversed. So if you see you're running into him and he's pushing you the opposite way, or you come to a stalemate, then maybe you have these values reversed. For me, the y-axis is the horizontal axis. It is possible to change it in Unreal, or at least to build your level differently, or have it set up a little bit differently, where left and right are flipped. So feel free to play around with these and make sure these values are correct for you. Make sure you check sweep on these. Sweep allows it, before moving the character, it will stop them if they're going to overlap with something or collide with something along the way. This is really important because we have our boundaries on the left and right side. And if we are to... we can test it. So if we don't have sweep on, we'll be able to push them directly out of the map, which, while preferable for the player who's winning, not really preferable for a fun game. So we can push them here. Okay, even 0.8, it can be a small adjustment like this. Ba-doop. And now he's outside the barrier because we did not sweep, and he is stuck. He's actually inside the barrier. So now he's stuck. He's dead, basically. So if you do sweep, it will make sure that on overlap or on hit of the barrier on the outside, he won't get pushed any farther, and thus he won't be able to go into it and get stuck into it. There are more things you can do with the hit result and things like that. You could actually change the values entirely of their location. You could give them a different animation if you wanted to while being pushed. But as far as I'm aware, and mostly from what I've seen, there's no extra animations when you're pushing the character. They kind of just sit there in the state they're in, and you change their location. Now, a few other things. So this is good. This is actually all we need to push the character. But there are a few things we can change to make this a little bit smoother, especially if it's really jittery. So one thing that we need to do, or that we should do, is on our capsule component, make sure can character step up on our capsule component of our base character VP is set to yes. This will stop the bouncing of the character. So it does allow you to sit on top of the character, but that's okay. We can manually go in and say disable disable collision here and let the player fall through and push the characters away from each other. If we're bouncing, that becomes way harder because we have to detect it on the moment we collide, disable the bouncing, and drop the character. We don't want to do all that. So looking forward to the future, and I'll mention this again in that episode where we're fixing standing on top of our character's head and not being able to jump off of our character. But just for now, because it'll also make your life a little bit nicer, you're probably tired of seeing that bounce, I know I was, you can just set this right here to yes, and it will allow them to step up there. Okay? Alright, and then lastly, we can change a few settings in the character movement to actually make our push a little bit better. So you do you know, whatever you want to do, you can change any of these settings, obviously. It's all up to you. There's a few things in particular that I changed because I thought that it made the push a little bit nicer. So my gravity scale was already at 2. But sometimes, I'll be completely honest, sometimes when you're pushing your character, it's not a consistent speed. And it has a little bit to do with friction and acceleration. So if I load this level, and I push in my character, you can see I push him, okay, like that's probably about the right speed. If I sometimes actually it doesn't seem so bad. I think I evened it all out because you can change all these values and fix it up, and I think I end up getting a value that I'm pretty happy with. But regardless, you may see that sometimes you actually push them at different speeds, which is a little bit silly, but it's actually because you're having more collisions with them. You're colliding with them more than once, or not more than once necessarily, but more times. And the movement in between you pushing them, the distance they traveled, and you colliding with them again can be shorter or longer depending on your character's speed and things like that. So in this case, I think I actually evened it all out to where it's not an issue. I'm not seeing an issue with it. But there's a few things that I changed to get here. So one, I unchecked maintain horizontal ground velocity. Now, this basically, as far as I understand it, is that while you're moving, if you're moving up something or down something, so if the stage is a little bit uneven and things like that, you're going to keep the horizontal velocity you have. So basically, you don't lose any of that by going up or down, or by colliding something that pushes you a little bit up into the air, something like that. So I unchecked that because I didn't want any sort of friction or collision issues happening if the stage wasn't completely straight. If it has the slightest rotation value on the ground, even if we can't see it and it doesn't really seem to affect gameplay, it could affect the movement. So it is important that either you uncheck this or go through and just make sure your stages are completely even. However, since there's not going to be any sort of vertical movement in our game other than jumping and launching, but not moving like up steps and things, we don't need this anyway, so you can feel free to uncheck it. Won't hurt anything. Some other things that I actually decided upon that I think I guess I took out because I didn't really like it as much. I say I think because I did change a lot and I couldn't exactly remember my values, but none of these have the revert arrow, so I must have gotten rid of all of them. These other things that I had, like air control, were set from before. But you can change the braking friction factor, which I'll let you read the comment, but basically this will help determine how much friction slows you down. And then you can also change the requested move use acceleration. This is more for path following, but I have seen people use it outside of that. I'm not entirely sure if it uses it or not. But basically, when a character or an AI is trying to move, it will determine if the velocity is set without requiring acceleration. This could be good for AI in the future, so I'm pointing it out now regardless of the fact that I am not changing the value. And it might not even be useful for characters. But acceleration is a huge one here. So I have the default acceleration, but if I had like 50,000, okay, and this might be way too fast. because even if the max speed is a certain value, it is going to allow it to move super fast because of just the acceleration and the change in speed. So, okay, it's actually not going to affect it. So never mind. The pushing is pretty good with the settings I have here. I don't see anything wrong with it. So you might not need to change anything. But in case you don't like the pushing, in case you're not satisfied with it, look around your acceleration, braking, friction factor. You can change this per character if you end up wanting other characters to push more than others, and you can't seem to get it with just the values alone. And then look at taking off this, maintain horizontal ground velocity. And if you find anything else, let me know. There's plenty of settings in here that I honestly don't know what they do until I use them for the first time. So feel free to explain to me, if you find that, oh, this is really helpful for pushing your character, then I'd be happy to know that. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. That's how you can push your character and jump on top of their head now. That way we can push them down later, and we won't have that silly bouncing anymore. Alright, guys, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Sean the Bro. If this helped you, please subscribe. It does more for the channel and more for me than anything else you can do, and it's completely free. It just shows me that you support the channel and you support the tutorial, and hopefully that I'm helping you and teaching you. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube membership and Patreon supporters and subscribers. Thank you guys so much for all you do and for continuing to make this not only genuinely fun for me, but giving me even extra support, saying that you believe in me. I just really appreciate it. Thank you so much. If you had any issues with this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. I'd be happy to join and join you in any of the issues that you had and go over anything and try and get these issues solved for you so you can keep working on your game. Lastly, guys, if you want to go check out some programming live streams, we do one every Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, and we also do some fun gaming Twitch streams on things like Bloodborne and the Souls games every Wednesday. Alright, guys, and that's all I got, so thank you so much for watching. Once again, I'm Sean the Bro, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.